Imagine tearing down your own backyard pool, only to have a neighbor call the cops on you claiming you're committing a crime on your own land. Sounds crazy. Now imagine that neighbor is the HOA president, and she's about to be humiliated in front of the entire community. This isn't just petty drama. This is war. And in the end, justice isn't just served. It's delivered with a cold glass of satisfaction. Stick around because this revenge story is packed with outrageous entitlement, savage comebacks, and one brilliant plan that left a Karen red-faced and powerless. If you love neighborhood revenge stories with dramatic twists and satisfying endings, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and let's dive into the madness. The roar of the backhoe sliced through the morning silence like a scream. The sky was overcast, but heat radiated from the cracked stone patio, as if the sun were blazing overhead. Sweat rolled down my back as I stood at the edge of the pool, watching the excavator scoop out the first bucket of blue tile and concrete. The air reeked of diesel and dust. My dog Max whimpered from inside the house where I had locked him away, to keep him safe from the chaos. I had barely taken a breath when I heard her voice, sharp and shrill like nails dragging down the side of a chalkboard. "What is happening here?" I turned slowly, already knowing who it was. Karen stood at the edge of her meticulously trimmed lawn, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Designer sunglasses perched on her nose despite the lack of sunlight. Her mouth twisted with fury like she had tasted something rotten. "You can't do this," she snapped. I kept my voice calm. "This is my property, Karen. I got the permits. Everything's legal." She scoffed and waved a stack of papers in my face. "Did you get HOA approval? Did you submit this to the neighborhood aesthetic board? You're violating community cohesion." I blinked. "That's not a thing. Karen, this is a residential backyard pool, not a historic monument." She stomped across the grass in her wedge heels and placed herself directly between the machine and the pool. The demolition crew shut down the engine at my signal and waited, watching her like she was a live wire. "You're ruining the whole look of the block," she hissed. "This pool has been part of our visual harmony for 15 years. I gestured to the cracked tiles, the algae stains, the warped deck boards. "It's falling apart. It hasn't held water since last summer. The insurance company said it's a liability. It has to go." Karen narrowed her eyes behind her oversized lenses. "Then you should have asked me first." I let out a humorless laugh. "Asked you?" "I'm the HOA compliance liaison," she said as if it meant she were royalty. "You can't just make changes without community consensus. You're dragging down property values." I pointed toward the paperwork on the clipboard. "City permits signed and sealed. Your opinion doesn't override municipal authority." She grabbed her phone and started recording. "You're going to regret this. This is an act of community aggression, and I will not be bullied in my own neighborhood." The excavator operator looked at me, then at her, then killed the engine entirely. Karen panned her camera dramatically from the machine to my face. "I am documenting this illegal activity," she announced. "You are violating HOA Code 22, Section B, Subsection 1. "There is no Subsection 1, I said. She scowled. Behind us, the other neighbors were starting to peek out from behind their blinds. A few opened windows. One stepped onto his porch holding a mug. Watching Karen noticed the attention, and her posture straightened like she was stepping onto a stage. "This is exactly the sort of behavior that ruins a peaceful community," she shouted. "First the pool. Next thing we know, he'll put up a chicken coop or paint his house orange. Anarchy starts in small doses." I rubbed my temples. "You're being ridiculous." She ignored, me still filming, still narrating. "This will be reported immediately," she said, then paused. "Yes, hello. Is this the police? Yes, I'd like to report a neighbor destroying property. No, it's not his. It belongs to the visual trust of the community." My jaw dropped. She was really calling the cops. "You're calling the police because I removed my own pool. Because you're endangering the public," she snapped. "You didn't consider runoff. You didn't consider children wandering into an unsafe demolition zone. You didn't consult me. I'm not required to consult you, Karen." She smiled, a slow, vicious grin. Then you'll enjoy talking to the authorities. Max barked from inside the house. I glanced at him through the window, his nose pressed to the glass. His eyes wide, sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Karen lowered her phone and smiled triumphantly. This neighborhood will thank me sooner or later. I looked at the excavator. The pool. The neighbors now openly filming from their porches. Karen stood with her hands on her hips, a queen surveying her kingdom. The sirens grew louder, closer, and I realized this wasn't just about a pool. This was about control, and she wasn't going to stop until she broke me, or until I broke her. Grip on this neighborhood, and I had just run out of patience. The police cruiser rolled up slowly, lights flashing. No siren. 2 officers stepped out. One young, tall hair slicked back like he was fresh from academy. The other older, with lines etched deep into his face and a clipboard tucked under his arm. Karen was already waving them over like a runway marshal. Officers over here. This man is causing a public disturbance and committing property destruction. The younger officer gave her a patient smile. Whose property, ma'am? Karen pointed at my demolished pool. That one, he's destroying community assets. The older officer turned to me. You the homeowner? I nodded and handed over my ID and permit papers. He scanned the forms, flipped a page, then looked up. This is your property, and you got all the right. Permit City even stamped it. Nothing illegal here. Karen sputtered. You're missing the point. It's not just about permits. It's about harmony, neighborhood continuity. The visual integrity of the block is being erased. The younger officer raised an eyebrow. Visual integrity, ma'am, is that in the penal code? Karen's eyes flared. Don't be flippant, this is a matter of public concern. This kind of reckless behavior leads to chaos. Soon others will tear up their driveways or put in neon lawns. The older officer handed my papers back. Ma'am, unless he's breaking the law. This is a civil matter, not a police one. Karen turned red, the color creeping from her collar up her neck. He's endangering children. Someone could fall into that pit. He hasn't fenced it off. I pointed toward the temporary fence the crew had just erected. Sturdy aluminum panels, bright orange caution tape strung between. The younger officer nodded. Looks secure. Crew seems professional. No violation. Here, Karen took a step back, her phone trembling slightly in her hand. So you're not going to do anything? The older officer sighed. We can't arrest someone for removing their pool. If you have a complaint, take it up with the HOA. Karen stared at them, her expression unreadable. Then she turned to me, her voice low and bitter. This isn't over. You've declared war on this community. She stormed off, heels clicking against the concrete like gunshots. The officers got back into their cruiser and drove off. The demolition crew restarted the machine and the excavation continued. But something had changed. Karen no longer just hated the pool removal. Now she hated me. The next morning I found a warning slip taped to my front door from the HOA, violation, failure to maintain neighborhood aesthetic. I laughed out loud. An hour later my trash bins were tipped over, garbage scattered across the driveway. Then came the anonymous notes, ugly typed in all caps, words like disgrace and vandal and nuisance. Week later, someone keyed my car. I knew who was behind it. Karen didn't need to sign her name to leave a fingerprint at the next HOA meeting, which she chaired. Of course I showed up, just to make her look me in the eye. The room smelled like stale coffee and lemon disinfectant. The folding chairs were hard, the expressions harder. Karen stood at the front like a preacher delivering judgment. The subject of neighborhood degradation must be addressed, she declared. Our standards are slipping. We must not let one person's selfish actions lower our collective worth. A few people clapped. Others avoided eye contact. I raised my hand. Karen stiffened. Yes, the man who destroyed the pool. What could he possibly have to add? I stood, cleared my throat. I followed every law, every code, paid every fee. But that wasn't enough because I didn't ask you first. Is that it? Karen folded her arms. You didn't respect the process? I scanned the crowd, saw eyes watching, waiting. The real issue is control, not community. You want obedience, not neighbors. Karen's nostrils flared. This isn't about control, it's about preserving order. I held up one of the anonymous letters. Then why am I getting these? Why was my car keyed? Why was my dog's water bowl dumped every morning for a week? Who's preserving order there? The room fell silent. Karen laughed dry and brittle. You have no proof of any of that. Maybe you should consider whether your behavior invited consequences. The implication hung heavy. In the air, a few people shifted in their seats. One woman frowned and looked away. I stepped forward, looked Karen straight in the eye. You've crossed the line. This isn't an HOA anymore. It's a personal vendetta. And I won't let you bully me, Karen smiled cold and perfect. Then you'd better prepare because this isn't going to stop. Her words weren't a threat. They were a promise. I walked out of that meeting with my jaw clenched so tight I could feel my molars ache. Karen had declared war, and this time I wasn't playing defense. The morning I put up the sign was unusually quiet. Not a single barking dog, no leaf blowers, no Karen. A white banner stretched across the fence where the pool used to be. Bold black letters. Coming soon. Zen. Garden meditation. Space. I saw the moment she noticed she was walking her tiny dog, the one that yapped like it ran on caffeine. She stopped mid-step, jaw slack, eyes narrowing like a hawk spotting prey. I gave her a polite wave. She didn't return it, just glared and walked faster, dragging the dog behind her. That was the day the real games began. By noon, I had 3 new HOA notices, noise complaints, unauthorized construction, unapproved signage. I laughed as I crumpled each one and tossed it in the recycling bin. Karen was trying to drown me in paperwork, but I'd done my research. My so-called Zen garden followed every rule. No permanent structures, no electrical wiring, nothing needing a permit, just landscaping. Gravel, bamboo, a small wooden bench, all within my rights. The next day a drone hovered over my backyard, buzzing like a wasp, circling slowly, trying to catch something, anything. I looked up, stared directly at the lens, raised my coffee mug and toasted. It zipped away, but I knew it wouldn't stop there. Karen didn't believe in battles. She believed in sieges. Later that week I received a letter, not typed, handwritten in perfect cursive, as if that made the words more polite. You are destabilizing the harmony of this community. Please consider the emotional impact your choices have on your neighbors. It wasn't signed, but it reeked of Karen. I didn't respond. I planted more bamboo. I added a wind chime. One of those deep-toned ones that sounds like a temple bell. Karen must have heard it. Because that night someone cut the string, it lay twisted in the gravel. Metal tubes tangled and snapped. That was her line. That was the moment. I knew this needed to end. I didn't go to the HOA. Didn't call the cops. Didn't post on social media. Instead, I filed something much more interesting. I filed for a tax exemption under a clause in our local zoning laws. A space used primarily for spiritual or religious practice could qualify for religious land use protection, and so the Zen garden became the temple of tranquil waters. I built nothing, changed nothing. Added a small plaque by the bench and registered it with the city. I received confirmation in 3 weeks. The next HOA meeting was packed. More people than I'd ever seen. Karen stood in front as usual. Tight smile, clipboard clutched like a weapon. Before she could begin, I raised my hand. She tried to ignore me, but murmurs from the crowd forced her to call on me. I'd like to announce a change. The space in my backyard is now legally registered as a religious sanctuary under city code. It is protected under religious land use statutes, meaning it is exempt from HOA interference. A silence fell. You could hear a phone vibrate in someone's purse. Karen blinked once, twice. You can't do that. That's a mockery of real religion. I shrugged. It's legal. I can even give guided meditations if I want. Technically, I'm a minister now. Someone in the back laughed. Karen flushed. You can't use zoning law to dodge. Community standards, I smiled. Actually, I can. And I did. The room exploded, some people cheering, some whispering, Karen trying to bang her clipboard like a gavel. You think you're clever, you think you've won? I stepped forward. This wasn't about winning. It was about living in peace. You made it a war. So I found a way to protect myself. Legally, calmly. Just like the Zen garden teaches. Karen's eyes burned. You've embarrassed this community. I looked around, or maybe I've reminded it that control has limits, that neighbors should respect each other's rights even when they disagree. Someone clapped. Then another. Soon the room was filled with applause. Karen didn't speak again that night. She left early, shoulders stiff, jaw clenched, watched her go, and for the first time in months I felt the tension leave my chest. But I knew her silence wasn't surrender. It was regrouping. Karen didn't lose, she retreated, and the next move would be her boldest yet. It started with a knock, not on my front door, on my fence, 3 sharp raps, deliberate, aggressive, like a warning. I stepped into the backyard. Karen stood there with 2 police officers. Her expression was smug, her eyes gleaming with anticipation, like a cat presenting a mouse to its owner. One officer lifted his hand. Sir, we received a report of illegal demolition and unpermitted religious activity. We need to ask you a few questions. Karen folded her arms. See, I told you. This is a scam. A fake. Church, he just tore out his pool and made it up to mess with everyone. I kept my voice calm. My property was modified in accordance with zoning guidelines. There is no structure, no electricity, no plumbing, just a landscaping project. And yes, it is. Legally recognized by the city as a spiritual sanctuary. The younger officer flipped through a tablet. Actually, he's right. He filed paperwork, was granted a religious land use exemption under Ordinance 29C. Everything appears legitimate, Karen sputtered. But he doesn't even host services. There are no people, just a bench and some rocks. That's not a church. The older officer raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, the law doesn't require congregants or sermons. Spiritual practice can be individual. And unless he's breaking noise ordinances or creating a public nuisance, there's nothing we can enforce. Karen's face went from pink to red to something close to purple. You don't understand. He's manipulating the system. He's making a mockery of religion and of this community. I turned to her. My backyard has been peaceful. No parties, no loud music, just quiet. But ever since I removed the pool, you've harassed me. Why is that? Karen, is it because it means one less place to spy on from your upstairs window? Or did it bother you that someone did something you couldn't control? The officers exchanged glances. The younger one spoke again. We'll file the report, but it's clear no crime has been committed. Have a good day, sir. Karen stood frozen, still staring, still unable to comprehend that her masterstroke had fallen flat. I watched them walk away. Karen dragging behind like a child being let out of a candy store empty-handed. But it didn't end there that evening. My phone buzzed. A neighbor had posted something to the community app. It was a photo, Karen screaming at the cops. One of the officers looking directly into the camera. Expression board caption, Karen calls the cops on a garden, fails spectacularly within. An hour it had been shared across the entire HOA. By midnight, someone turned it into a meme picture of my empty backyard text overlay, where inner peace meets Karen's inner rage. The next day, I walked to my mailbox. People smiled, waved. One man gave me a thumbs up. Karen didn't come outside. Her windows stayed shuttered, her curtains drawn. A week passed. Then another at the next HOA meeting. She wasn't in her usual seat. Her nameplate was gone. A new woman sat in her place. She introduced herself as interim chair. When someone asked about Karen, the woman just said she resigned, citing personal stress and health concerns. I didn't clap, I just sat quietly, listening, watching the room shift. There were fewer rules being barked, more cooperation, less control. The neighborhood started to breathe again. One evening as I tended the garden, I heard soft footsteps. I turned. It was Karen's husband. He looked exhausted. older than I remembered. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything she got caught up in the power. Forgot people were supposed to be neighbors, not enemies. I nodded. I appreciate that, I really do. He hesitated, then handed me a small wooden box. She wanted to give this back. It was your wind chime. She kept it in her garage, said it reminded her of the day she lost control. She couldn't throw it away. Thought maybe you should have it again. I took it, held it gently. The tubes glinted in the fading light after he left. I rehung it on the tall post by the bench. The wind stirred, a soft low note rang out deep and resonant like closure. I sat, let the sound wash over me, felt the silence that followed settle like morning mist. The battle was over, not with fists, not with fury, but with patience and strategy. And calm Karen had underestimated me, assumed I was just another obstacle to push aside. She didn't realize some people don't shout back. They build walls of quiet and wait until the noise burns itself out, and when it does, what's left is peace. Not because it was given, but because it was earned, and that was the sweetest victory of all.